every movement has a life cycle, except the one that I just described. God's kingdom has no life cycle. But within the movement of God, there are little movements, just like the Anabaptist movement. There's always little revivals that God brings within His kingdom that try to lead us back to the essentials, to what matters. So this is a movement with a lowercase m. You know, God's movement is the big vision, and then there comes our visions within that big vision, within that movement. It's some kind of, if you think of a stream, you know, those rapids. You know, we are a rapid in that, and I hope we are a good rapid in there that bursts as much excitement. Dream, that starts with a dream. This is true for any movement. It starts with a dream and a vision. There's usually a cause. In the Anabaptist movement, it was like the church has gotten off track. So how do we come back? The big dream was, how do we recover the vision of Jesus, okay? So there was this dream, the vision of Jesus. How do we recover this? So it starts with a dream and usually a dreamer. There's usually some radical people that are being called and anointed to give voice to that somehow. But the dream doesn't start with them. It starts with God. And it is very quickly spread because it's usually the spirit of the times. And this dream gathers people. The dream gathers people around. There's people that gather around the dream. The point is, in a movement, there are really no steps. It gets pretty messy and chaotic. So there might be a dreamer, and there might be action, and then there might be a strategy after the action, or there might be a strategy and then the action. But it doesn't fit a linear kind of concept that we often have. We think in terms of first this, first that. In a movement, everything goes kind of helter-kelter. You know, everything is just kind of different, more chaotic. It's usually a gathering around that, and there's goals that are being developed in actions. And I give you in a bit an example from our own church experience how that happened. But sometimes actions are kind of the spark for that movement. In the civil rights movement, it was when Rosa Parks would take action, and out of that action, strategies developed and marches happened and so on. So, and then after what the actions produce or what the strategies produce, we put structures. And I think this is important, this concept, because we often, in our more traditional churches, we look at structures and we try to protect the structures as if they are what we are trying to go for. But it's usually the Spirit at work in movement. The Spirit is at work, and the church is gathering around that dream, around that action, around that puts action to that dream, and then the structures follow that in order that it's sustainable, that doesn't kind of fall apart right away. And then there's this experience at the top of this life cycle where people would say, we got it, it's us. Now, we are Penn State. You know, I don't have to say more. Everybody that's part of that movement understands what that means. You know, it could be for better or for worse, but we is an identity that understands that they are united in vision and action. So there's no question. Nobody would say, what are you talking about? They know what they're talking about, and they act accordingly. That's what hopefully is a desirable place for our churches, to be united in vision and action. But what often happens at that point is that unless the vision is renewed, and I'm going to give at the end of our time here a little bit of hopefully a good idea of how to recover a life cycle without falling apart. In other ways, is there a possibility, can it be that a church can be continuously renewed and being a movement without going through the whole cycle? Do we have to wait until we are dead, until we say, well, you know what, we had a dream? What are we doing here? So my hope is, as we talk, and I think this is what we're doing as a conference, is let's not wait until we are all dead and gone before we start thinking about how we can stay in the life cycle of the movement. And the questioning is a step in the direction of when the vision is being questioned, when people don't even know anymore what the vision was. That's when the life cycle starts to decline, and we begin to maintain programs and structures and buildings, and we eventually are just known as an institution and function as an institution, whether God is present or not. I'm going to encapsulate 20 years of West End. Okay, the church exists since 20 years. 15 years ago, we started a covenant, which was the birth of the church. I consider that the starting point. But 20 years, Brendan and I came on board with we didn't even have a dream. We just came to Lancaster. We were saying, hey, God has called you here. We didn't even know why. Okay, we knew we wanted to go to Lancaster, and we didn't even quite understand why. But he was also a church, had a church in Lancaster, Charles Street Mennonite Church, and I give him a call and I say, Leon, I'm moving to Lancaster. I'm not sure why. Would you have anything to do for me? And he said, you know what? We are just starting this group in the basement of Charles Street. And they're already meeting for a year now or so, and they have no leadership. They actually don't exactly know why they exist. We started them because we had parking issues, and we thought we'd start a second service. Would you have an interest getting to know those people? So I did. I went to that group, and they said, we need a leader. You want to lead us? I said, well, I guess, let's see if the Lord has something with us together, And so we gathered that group and gathered a dream. We said, what are we about? Some people came there because somebody had to work nights, and it was a Sunday afternoon service. Another person came there because they wanted an alternative service. They didn't like the music in the morning. It was too traditional. Another person came because they wanted to reach out to the neighbors. And so we had a small group of people with various ideas and visions and dreams. And we said, well, God, what would be your dream for us? And isn't that a simple concept for Christians to ask that? Instead of what do I want, what would you want us to do? And the first thing that happened is, and I don't know even how people found us, because we were in the basement of another church, best kept secret in town. We were not on the internet because it wasn't existent. We were not in the phone book. We were nobody. We were nowhere but in a basement, and people found us. I don't know how, honestly, but this one lady came, and she had 4 children, and we were that little group was reaching out to her. She probably didn't know what hit her. She had a stroller next week. She had people visiting her. She had food. People were just touched by reaching out, and there was kind of a sentiment that arose in us. We loved to give. We loved to bless. And then I worked part-time. I was only quarter-time there. I worked part-time as a No Longer Alone counselor. No Longer Alone Ministries is a ministry to mentally ill people and their loved ones. And in the process, I got to know some people that, were very much on the fringes of society, and nobody wanted in church for some reason. At that time, anyhow, it seemed that way. And they started to come, and they started to be blessed, and they started to bring their folks to church. And one, I could tell you stories you wouldn't believe, but there was this guy. He was so out of it that the father became a psychologist just to rescue his son from destruction. He was literally tied into a bed for most of his life. And in community and with the healing of Jesus and medication, he became a man as gentle as you wouldn't believe. And he's still one of my best friends. And he brought his parents, because his parents couldn't for the life of them not figure out how that can happen to anybody, especially their son. We tried to cure him all our life. Where did you land? Where did you end up? What happened to you? And he said, well, it must have been Jesus, because he couldn't explain it either. And the community, the body of Christ. And so they came to church, or became part of the church, and they became the first church planters of West End. That family, they became the first church. We sent them out. But anyhow, the dream became, the first line in our vision statement was, healing community. We are a healing community. It actually ended up to be, we welcome all people into a safe and healing community. That became us. We understood that, and we acted like it. But it was a dream that God introduced to us. And my prayer became, give us those who nobody wants. And I say to my congregation sometimes, and here you are. I'm not sure if you got that joke. I prayed, give us all those who nobody else wants in society, that are down and out, that are rejected. And God brought them. Guess what? He answers prayers like that. And guess what? It says something. And then I felt overwhelmed. I said, God, stop it. This is too much. And God said, I didn't ask you to do it. I asked the body of Christ to do it. And there were years where the first 5 years, and I just want to give you a time frame that this didn't happen overnight. That period, the dream, lasted at least 5 years. And there was struggle. There was disagreement. There were people that left us. People that said, we don't want to leave Charlotte Street. What are you doing? What is this? We had big time struggle. It took us 5 years to even come to that conclusion. Yes, that's what God wanted, to welcome all people in the safe and healing community, even if it means that some people won't be with us. But that's the dream. And we are not going to give up on it. And then it went really well, especially when we moved to another location. We moved actually from Charlotte Street, just 3 blocks down the street. So we got a building, and we had no money to buy it. We practically got it handed to us. It was a bar that was repossessed by a bank, and we moved in the bar, and the bar is practically in the center of Lancaster. And God gave us that building to be in the hub of Lancaster. We in faith bought the building, and actually Eastern Mennonite Missions had a lot to do with it, and I thank them for it. They really helped us at that point. And then 2 years later, we paid it off. It created this experience of, this is us, nothing can stop us. Identity, the year 2000 here. And then for the next few years, we just, 2000 to 2005. And it went great. It really went great. And what happened is a lot of people from the community joined this and reinforced the vision. We are a healing community. And what I said with the body of Christ, we started to become ministers to one another. It wasn't anymore the pastor preaches, the pastor counts. And people, I just started to realize that the person that was mentally ill and society would kick out on the curb and say, you have nothing to offer, you don't have a job, you are nobody, connecting with somebody with the likes of me, like may I say, who felt like I had education, I was somehow superior, I knew what I was doing, that I needed him as much as he needed me. I needed him, and I'm not kidding, I needed him. It taught me humility, it taught me gratitude, it taught me so many things. It taught me friendship. It taught me that he didn't give a rip how much education I had. What he wanted to know is, do you love me? And actually, that was exactly the question I wanted to have answered. Do you love me? What did I care if somebody shows me his office credentials? Do you love me? I don't need to know anyone, but we needed one another in some significant ways. Yes, he had mental health issues, and he needed me maybe to help him take his meds, but I needed him for other things. So we needed one another, and my role as a pastor was, how do I connect those people with one another that needed each other? Because I already knew they needed each other, and I knew that they all came because they were a gift from God. So that's where we were for those years. In 2009, around this time, a significant personal issue happened. My son died. One of my sons, he died in a car accident, and it changed pretty much everything. I mean, for me personally, and reshaped my life. But in essence, it brought me back to this. But I don't have time to go into this. And the congregation experienced a spike in growth, just an amazing spike in growth and in unity, because we were so together in this. And I, for the first time, realized I am not only the pastor, I'm being shepherded by a lot of people. So I realized that my ministry, increasingly, I was dependent on the people that I was serving. To the day. But what happened is, more and more people got attracted to this vision that reaching out to the poor and following their dream is actually incredibly rewarding. And there was an experience and a worshipfulness and a purposefulness that people are attracted to. And the people that were attracted to were the people that would never have come in the beginning, because they didn't see programs for their children. They didn't see the right location in town. They thought it smelled musty in this building. But anyhow, we were desperate for people that I thought had it together at the time, but God taught us otherwise. We didn't necessarily need them, but they came. And at this stage, a lot of people came. They moved to town, and some come with very mature and so on, like Carolyn, of course. But then, in that process, around this time, 2005, and then a little bit after that, it was after Micah died. It was 2009. I took a sabbatical for 6 months. The church just basically said, "You are not in ministry right now. You are on sabbatical." And they gave me all the time I needed, and yet they gave me enough involvement with the church that I wasn't kind of lost. And so I didn't preach anymore at the time. I didn't counsel anymore. But what I did is I was present enough to receive, and then after 6 months, I shared with the congregation what I'm learning. And I said, "This is what I'm learning." And basically, God had brought me back to the dream, and He said, Micah is no longer, but Micah had the same heart. He totally got the church. At that point, somebody after that sermon, I think it was the first or second sermon after I came back from sabbatical, they said a person came up to me and they just started coming to church, maybe for a year, and they were saying, she was looking at me and she said, with anger, with fire in her eyes, she said, "What about us?" It was a sermon I had that you have to welcome all people into a safe and healing. That's the dream. She said, "What about us?" I said, "What about you?" It reminded me of the prodigal son story. Like, why are you after the lost son? What about me? I said, "You have everything. You got it. Why are you asking that question?" And I tried to explain it to them. I tried to sweeten the deal. I said, "We need you." I was kind of accommodating. There was a couple. And they were the first people that started to grasp my vision. They were saying, "You know what? Now we are here. Shouldn't you change something? Because isn't it about us?" But see, they didn't understand the first thing about what it was about. It wasn't never about us. It was always about us. You know what I'm saying? It was never about a clique of people, never about a group of people, never about... We were not an entity unto ourselves. So this I'm making too much of a story here. So after a little bit of a conflict and different things that we encountered through that situation, what they served us actually well. I could actually thank them for what they did, because what it did to us, it woke us up in the leadership team to what are we actually and who are we? In order to recover our vision and stay in the stream, you cannot go too far down the slide. In fact, you should probably start changing something, way early. It's new growth. It's basically, don't ever go to where most churches are right now, where you forgot the vision, where you question it, and then what's the next step after the questioning? There's you entertain structures. You have to continuously come back to the dream. If you don't come back to the dream, you will die. You have to dream the dream every day. This is why we have communion in church. And this is why we should have it probably every Sunday or every time we meet. Because that's what the Anabaptists did. Because what does it do? Why did Jesus say, do this in remembrance to me? Because we so easily forget. The only way we stay in the stream is we encounter the dream time and time again. Not by what we say, but how we live. Every time when we are together, not just in church, my job is to remind people of the dream. And the big dream is that Jesus died for all people. The big dream is that we are people that renew the earth. Every time we get together in our church services on Sunday morning, there's somebody getting up, not because we planned it that way, but because people feel free to do that, and we encourage it, that would in society never get the mic, okay? Never. We would do everything to keep them somewhere else. We don't want to hear them. There's this guy, he comes up front every Sunday. He wanted to come 2 or 3 times up front. We limited to 1 time. Okay, that's all right. But we invite him to come up front. And the prayer contains all sorts of things. It's a mini sermon almost, about paradise, about, Jesus. You hear different words. And then in the middle of this prayer, it comes like this. You are nothing. Everybody can hear it because we are tuning into that. A lot of people, and I often say to the congregation, this is what the sermon is. You hear that. If you don't hear this, you don't need to hear anything else. This was already the sermon. So go in peace, okay? Whatever else we do, that's central. So what we are doing by saying that is we remind the people of the vision. First of all, by letting him speak, because he is the dream, okay, of God, to include the people that nobody else includes. Secondly, because he has gifts that we need. And he reminds us, he's the preacher. He reminds us of who we are as people that need Jesus. Because he knows it, and unfortunately, the likes of me forget. All right?